this decision making
What
and
do we
not
mean
getting
when
wrapped
we
up.
talk about the in-between, the nexus of our lives, of our reality? So often when we look back at our lives, we look at the milestone moments, these plateaus and footprints that we leave behind as markers of our life's journey. That only makes up about 20 to 30%. The rest is defined and connected by the in-between. Everything that takes place in between. And this is where the art of the spiritual warrior comes in. We can develop the tools and the means to identify all these different elements in our world and become the alchemists of our lives, peering through the nexus and the prism of our multiverse, and drawing forth all that we are into the present now.
Hello all, hello everybody. It is a pleasure to be back on a wonderful Friday after the eclipse, the week of the eclipse. Whew, what a week it's been. We're going to check in nice and easy because there has been some of the biggest shifts that happened this week in my world personally, and I know for a lot of people. And they're still happening. A lot of people are unaware that they're still happening. So we're gonna move into this nice and easy, and we're gonna talk about some of the things that happened, some of the things that I experienced this week, and the results, some of the ripple effects, some of the echo that took place, that is still taking place, and how that is going to kind of lead us into talks of accountability and vulnerability as well. All wonderful pieces of the energy event that just took place. So, hi, welcome to the Wolf's Den. It's Friday. Wow, that eclipse. So, for so many of us, when we look at what just took place, and the last show that I was able to speak on last week was with Norma and Tanya, the lovely women that we have on this channel here, and we were speaking a little bit about the Black Sun, which is without a doubt exactly the event that took place in my experience, and for so many people that I know have the teachings around the Black Sun rising, and that just felt what took place. It certainly was not a traditional eclipse. And I mean, I've certainly seen some of the videos floating around of people seeing the eclipse on one side and turning around and seeing the moon in the sky, somewhere else. So what really happened, in my opinion, was the rising of the Black Sun. And a lot of the teaching that comes through, a lot of the energy that comes into place with the rising of the Black Sun is the internal rising of our own shadow, that internal Black Sun, that light, dark light is a great way to put it. So often we look at black, we look at darkness as being the negative connotation, when I think a much better way to put it is it's the lower vibration. It is the lower frequency that things need to originate from in order to rise to higher frequencies. In a lot of the courses that we teach, when we talk about a certain practice called running your colors, we start with the black. We start with no thingness, pure darkness. And what that is and what that entails is the origins of everything, because it has to stem from nothing. It has to come from absolutely the void in order to create and expand upon itself. So the Black Sun rising is representative of this in a metaphorical and a literal sense. And when we talk about the lower frequency, we're talking about a foundational piece, something that has to exist in order for higher frequencies to rise from. And this is the dance that takes place in events like this with the Black Sun rising, where it comes internally in ourselves and our shadow surfaces in such incredible ways is the best way to put it, because there shouldn't be a connotation of negative or positive or good or bad with the way the shadow rises. The shadow rises in the way that it needs to, and in reflection of our conscious vibratory frequency and our resonantial state. The shadow is a very interesting concept to learn how to dance with, because the shadow is an inevitable part of shining light. A shadow is cast every time a light is shown. When we become the light, the brighter that our essence is shining, brighter and brighter and brighter, it's simply enveloped. It is enveloped by the light. Our form, our unique essence, it becomes the very shining rays of the light itself, which is beautiful. It's magical. It's a part of that transformative process of rising into the oneness, the collective. The foundational piece, the lower vibrations, when the shadow is cast behind us as the light that we are, it gives form. It gives that unique shape to what we are as a source. And when we look at it from this concept, this isn't just a metaphorical thing for our human lives. We as humans are living a shadow being cast from the higher light of our true energetic essence and self. Knowing that if we want to change this form, if we want to change and dance with the shadow, we don't fight. We shouldn't struggle with it. We simply change the source of what is casting that shadow, the vibratory state of the light itself, which is giving shape to the shadow. A lot of these lessons come through not just in the events and the metaphorical concepts of Black Sun Rising, but these are very much so quantum teachings. And hello, love and light from Michigan. Great to see you on here. For me, what took place during the eclipse, during the rising, is about I say the eclipse, but it wasn't really an eclipse. It was Black Sun Rising. I felt it coming up for a few days beforehand, and I knew prior to any of these events even coming on my radar, the months beforehand, my frequency, my energy, my whole conscious state was rising to something that it hadn't experienced in this form yet. And there was a conscious link, there was a conscious anchoring to each level of the transformation process. I was still very much locked in the influence of each transformation step, and the external results were very much so still in alignment with where I was in a vibratory state. Now I could see certain changes and I could see certain influxes as this new energy was being adapted, and I was gaining whole new concepts and perceptions and working with new downloads and all of this stuff. As the months went by and I was anchoring more and more into this state, the event came on my radar, and I knew something big was going to take place during the event. Whether we could physically see it or not, whether we got distracted by something, I knew something big was going to take place during the event of, quote unquote, the eclipse during the rising. The week coming into it, the 2 weeks, but especially the week before, I felt this internal combobulation is the best way to put it, where I wasn't out of balance, but I felt like everything was kind of fuzzy. And it's not that there wasn't clarity coming through. It was just like everything was covered in fuzz, and it just felt very, very fuzzy, which told me, because I was still receiving clarity, I could still anchor and ground, things were shifting. There was a massive quantum energetic shift in the ether, and it was just making everything feel fuzzy because it was just doing this in the air. Everything was vibrating. The Sunday before the eclipse, I could feel it really internally. And we do this community call with some of our circles and some people that have taken some courses with David Piltz and myself. And we all get together and we kind of share metaphysical talk and how we're utilizing certain things like Reiki and metaphysics teachings in our world and how that's expanding for us. I was on the call and we had engaged in a little bit of back and forth, but I just couldn't bring my energy up to really, really jump into the call. And that fuzzy feeling that I was talking about was like coming from the inside out now, and I couldn't hit that grounding point anymore, which was telling me I wasn't supposed to be grounded. I was supposed to be in the fuzz. I was supposed to get all fuzzy and go with whatever that vibratory energy was doing on its own and just get into alignment of that. So I ended up jumping off the call a little bit early. I had something to eat. I went to bed early. And this is the Sunday before April 8th on the Monday. When I laid down and went to sleep, I have never quantum tunneled in such a way before. It was the only way that I've been able to describe it and articulate it is I went directly and stared into the cosmic kaleidoscope where the entire quantum, the infinity of the multiverse wasn't a prism anymore. It was this tunnel. And it was a swirling vortex that was on all sides, just zooming through and around and everywhere past me. And I was holding presence going through this quantum tunnel. And I could see all this variant and parallel and different versions of myself and different universes and different realities. And if I had tried to focus on it, it would have driven me mad. I would have lost all ability to even stay in a comprehensive state because there was no way to comprehend it. It was the infinity zooming past and around and through me. There was no way in a human context I would have been able to comprehend it. So, in the presence of that quantum tunnel, rather than trying to again focus on what was taking place, I made the conscious decision to be in my own presence within that tunnel and say, I get to choose any of these pieces of this infinity to bring forth my form, my chosen essence of light, because I am all of this entire quantum tunnel, this infinity that is surrounding me, going through me. It is me. The form that I choose is based off of, or the form that I take, I should say, is based off of my choices. All the choices built out of this infinity of expansion that I am always connected to. And when I realized in an essence, not in a conscious way, it wasn't a knowing, it was a state of being and just absorbing my choice. A presence came through in that quantum tunnel and I could walk through it. And by the time I did, and I came back into my body on the Monday, excuse me, I think I woke up two times throughout the day, throughout the next 24 hours for about, I don't know, an hour or two period. And I wasn't conscious during that. Like I was like a zombie. I was completely zoned out. That fuzzy feeling was a complete and utter just dyspatial uh, essence of reality. Like I could not be physically present during that next 24 hours. So I was awake for 11:11 my time on Pacific time, and I can't remember the next time I woke up. It was later in the evening, but it was two time periods. The rest of the time I was out, my body was assimilating all that new energy from the quantum and all that new understanding of that state, because I understood it wasn't just within that quantum tunnel that I could do that. Again, we are the casting. These forms are the shadows casted from that light, that very essence that I was just being presented. So knowing that, when I did start to come to on the Tuesday and into the Wednesday, I had certain things that I had lined up beforehand that I needed to catch up on accountability on in my own world. So, for example, I had spent a long time holding off actually booking my driver's road test. I've been driving for a number of years, but I've been driving on a learner's license because honestly, it was a rites of passage thing that certainly. Hold on, we have a comment here. It threw me on the black sun. This was a huge, huge rainbow. It did not circle the black sun, but over a hedge like it did. Yes, yeah, absolutely. And that these were the new light frequencies that were coming in with the black sun rising. We'll get into that in just a minute. So with this accountability that I had lined up beforehand, I had spent years holding off booking the test because in the Western world, for white guys, we don't have a lot of rites of passage. Like there really isn't anything beyond either doing your driver's license or getting your high school diploma. Like there are very, very few things for young men to go through rites of passage in Western world. I was fortunate enough to have certain aspects of that through martial arts, for example, getting my black belt, getting my second degree. Those were all rites of passage in their own essence, without question. But the driver's road test thing was something that from my from my youth, was a rite of passage. And it was a point of, we could say, blockage. It was something that I had not taken accountability for yet. And sure, there was a lot of reasons why it got pushed off for so long. Growing up in Calgary, the public transit system was very, very good. It was very expansive. I usually lived close by to where I worked, so I really didn't have a need for a vehicle growing up for the most part. It wasn't until I came out to BC that I needed to start driving. Um, before I left Calgary, I had done the learner's test. I did all that and did the initial rites of passage, but it wasn't completed. It was basically just like the acceptance portion of it, saying, yeah, now you have to prepare for the actual rite of passage. So every time it got to that point, my nerves would get up, my anxiety would get up, because it was something that I had not taken presence and accountability for. After about a year of being out here with a vehicle and driving with my learners out here, I had booked my first road test, and there was a number of factors that played into it. I didn't drive poorly, but there was enough nuances and enough nitpicks that I didn't pass the first exam. And it made me very salty, made me very, very salty, because it was something that my ego had attached to, and it very, very much so wanted that result. And the wanting pushed it away, pushed it out of my field of alignment. And at that point, I didn't quite have the full comprehension of that. I was still working on the understanding of having desires, having intention, but the difference between the frequency of that and the frequency of wanting. So that also led to a whole number of experiences in the following year, that if I had passed my license and did that test and got approved, the next year of experiences wouldn't have happened in the same format. And there was a lot of growth that needed to happen. So again, the divine timing aspect of things too. But the bottom line was, if the shift was going to take place, I had to make that happen from the inside out. I had to internalize that and change my frequency to it. So it was maybe, I don't know, a little over a month ago, month and a half ago. I booked the next road test, and sure enough, I'm getting all the same stuff, all the same anxieties, blah blah blah. But I said no, I have to get it done. So I booked it, and everything's coming up, everything's fine, yada yada yada. I go through the next month, everything's good. I get my practice runs in, all this stuff. The eclipse comes up. This whole event takes place. I go through this quantum shift. When I came out and I started to come back to this week, I have never felt such a calm, confident presence of being and in my own space, in my own reality, knowing, beyond knowing, becoming a shift for my very physical reality. So I immediately put that into action, saying, I got that road test in a couple days. So I'm just going to now choose to shift my frequency into the reality where I've already got my license. There's no question. It's not even about wondering what's going to happen during the test. Is this a good? There was no questions available at that point other than, do I do it or not do it? And making that decision is going to anchor me into the frequency. And that frequency shift is going to alter the physical layout of the reality that I'm experiencing. So I put it into action, did that, changed my frequency, went to bed the night before showing gratitude and saying thank you for it having already happened. It already took place. I'm already there. Thank you. And there was this state of being. Went in, everything went gold. It was fine. Came out, passed, did it, signed off. The rite of passage alchemy took place, and I felt that. I acknowledged it, and I felt the release of that lingering piece from adolescence. My state of being didn't change overall because I had already shifted into that presence. So there was no big like, oh, everything's different now, look, it feels so good. I had already shifted into that presence before the events took place. And because I had shifted into that reality and into that frequency and that full resonance within myself, reality just had to catch up. So the events that were taking place after didn't require all that energy, all that focus, all that attention. It just required my presence, just required me going through the experiences because it was just reality catching up to where I had already chosen to be. That was it. So it was an incredible affirmation on that level of being able to put all of that, this new download, this new frequency into motion and having the results almost instantaneously. I did it with a couple other things, and it was almost like within minutes to hours that certain things were happening. So what I'm doing now is I'm being very, very, very careful about the choices that I'm actually making, these decisions and these frequencies that I'm anchoring into. More than ever am I aware of where my thoughts are taking me. Wandering doesn't really exist anymore for the last few days anyway, for the portion of this week and how I can see myself moving forward. The wandering thoughts don't take hold anymore. They happen and I catch it immediately and I say, I'm not choosing that. This is just me being shown a shade of a parallel alternate reality that I could choose to shift into. I'm not choosing that. I have my conscious presence here and now. I acknowledge this thought and I acknowledge the alternate parallel that it's presenting to me. I don't choose it. I'm choosing my conscious reality. And it shifted this whole shadow dance into, again, understanding I am the light that casts the shadow. It doesn't stand in front, it doesn't lead the way. Shadow is there to support me as it takes the form that I choose based off of my resonance. So it was this whole new concept of integration and balance and going down for those 24 hours was intense too. Like my body, it felt very different than I've ever felt energy downloads before. When I was younger and I was in the service industry, I grew up as a dishwasher in restaurants, and I worked my way up over the years, about 15 or so years, to restaurant kitchen manager status. So I saw the whole ins and outs of that industry. And it was one of my first manager jobs at a bar. And I would be working by myself during the day, and it would be in the middle of lunch, and I would get Star Nation symbols being downloaded into my frequency. I don't know if I've talked about this on past shows yet or not, but there was a long period of time where I was just downloading Star Nation symbols like I was eating Skittles. Like, it was absolutely crazy how fast they were coming in. And the way that they came in, because it was a full body integration with it, where I had to, the downloading of a Star Nation symbol, it's not like the same concept as learning a word and then the definition of a word. A single symbol, regardless of its intricacy, can hold entire cultures worth of information behind it, varying degrees and concepts of applicability and definition, and so much so that when you're downloading it, it has to be from within. It can't be a concept of knowing. You have to be that energy, and then you try to articulate what that energy feels like and the definitions of it. That's how it worked for me when I was downloading them. So the physical reaction that I would get from it, I'd be in the middle of a lunch rush and my vision would start to go blurry and my body would start to shake, and I'd say, oh my God, it's coming. So I'd have to like put stuff on hold, and I would run to the bathroom and lock the door, because if anybody saw the next scenario, they would have been calling an ambulance immediately. I guarantee you. The energy was so intense. I would drop to the ground and my whole body would start shaking and vibrating like I was having a convulsion or a seizure or something like that. There was no pain, there was no foam, there was no like, I was perfectly consciously aware. There was no real discomfort as it was taking place. I could have done like math equations for the most part. It was a very, very calm state. But my bodily and physical reaction to that energy was so intense. That was the only way that it could, that the shadow was taking form, because the light itself was vibrating so powerfully with that download. My body had to do the same. So it was very intense downloads when I would get that. During this black sun rising, when I did this new quantum shift, that 24-hour period, the conscious periods that I had, and then the Tuesday after, it wasn't that type of feeling. It was a very, very different bodily feeling and shift that took place with that download. So um and then again, it led me to learning about the accountability aspect of things, of where my thoughts lead me directly. And now, because I'm so much in a vibratory state with the universe that I'm living in, it happens much, much quicker. So I have to be more consciously aware. With great power comes great responsibility. Thank you, Uncle Ben, and recently Aunt May, apparently too. But yeah, these are the rules in my world. So it's been a very interesting process of stepping into this, becoming this, because it also revealed to me that concept of we aren't we aren't reaching forward to become anything. We're actually removing filters that are stopping us from seeing who we already are in our full truest self. That flip just blew concepts away, right? Because when we're reaching towards something and we're working towards something, it takes a different kind of energy than it does to say, I don't need this, I don't need this, I don't need, to remove things and to say, this is a block, this is a block, I'm just getting out of my own way, and simply allowing yourself to be. But it's an interesting concept to get to, because for me, I had to go through a lot of breakdown periods. And what that did in my world, and what I've seen it do in a lot of people's worlds, and it's kind of even happening on the globe right now, is when we go through those breakdown periods, it puts us into a state again of choice, but within a duality aspect. Am I going to crumble because things are breaking down? Am I going to succumb to the breakdown? Or am I going to take my power and say, I'm going to do something about this? And in a lot of those instances, it doesn't mean having a visceral or a fear reaction to say, I'm going to do something about this, and then getting all uppity about the situation. It actually just says, you don't get to influence me any further. I'm humble enough to understand other opinions and other acknowledgments, and I am so open to collaboration when it is in alignment with me. But the bottom line is, this is my reality. I make my decisions. Nobody else and no other influence will ever make my decisions for me again. I am the dictator of that. And I am open to collaborate those decisions to expand into something greater than what I could see on my own initially. But nobody will ever tell me how to make my decisions, and nothing will ever influence that aspect again, because I understand now what that does to my reality. And having that conscious presence allows me to take that power and that responsibility in a very stellar, cosmic, intergalactic, assimilated way, to echo out into the cosmos to say, I am. Ooh, that is a powerful statement to make. That's what universe loves. I am statements, and I am presence. It's very, very powerful. Going to one of the comments that popped up a little bit earlier about some of the rainbow light and the halo that was taking place. I'm not sure if people noticed in some of the videos after. Yes, thank you. Bob 51. What threw me on the black sun was this huge, huge rainbow. It did not circle the black sun, but over our heads like a huge smoke ring. And I mean huge. So it's interesting that you bring that up, because other people too, when they were in the States, for example, who were in the path of the totality of the eclipse, they were noticing it was harder to decide for them whether to focus on the eclipse or that sunset ring, horizon ring, they were calling it, that was all around the visual of the ground level. And I know that there was a difference in frequency and energies in that. And part of that is not just the black sun rising, but when we look at even the comment from Bob there, we have these rainbow halos that are appearing just above people's heads. And to me, what this is representing, and we had talked about this on the Sunday with Norma and Tanya, there are new energy and light frequencies that are available during those times that are not available at other times throughout the way to go. I love that, Alex, peeling away to see the full you. Thank you. Oh, yes. Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate vulnerability is one of our greatest gifts. It's one of the most truest, powerful presences that we can make, because it is that I am presence. Here I am, and there's nothing you or anyone else can do about it. I am vulnerable, but I am powerfully vulnerable because nothing can shift me out of my state of being. It's very, very, very honoring of self and of everyone else, because you're not trying to pull the wool over anyone's eyes. You're not trying to show up as something that you're not. It's very, very honoring. So these new light frequencies that are available during these times, black sun rising, eclipse, they show us colors, they show us light bands. When I've done interdimensional journeys before, I've seen colors and I've seen frequencies that I can't articulate here, because humans haven't discovered or created the colors yet within our palette. And whether it's a discovery aspect, whether it's a frequency thing that it's outside of the normal bandwidth of human perception. But in interdimensional journeys, I've seen colors that don't exist here yet. And very much so, we will get that type of effect during these events. The eclipse itself, the black sun itself, oh, it was so powerful. The halo and the ring around it, there were, when people showed video and they zoomed in, and this, I think I even saw this on some of the news stream stuff that they showed too. If you get in close enough and you focus on it, there are these little licks, these little flare licks that come around where it's not just the beams because something's being blocked. And you got to think about that too, even from an actual scientific standpoint of when we block something, it really enhances the beams that are escaping from the blockages, right? Yes, the comment coming in, a rainbow type flame emanating over top of the sun. So very similar to what I'm talking about now is you'll see these licks that almost look like flames that are coming around the black circle. And that very much is a lot of this energy, this cosmic buildup of, I don't just want to use the term fire because it seems almost too rudimentary, but it's the element. It is the entire essence of fire, where that heat, that creation, that force is literally so powerful. It is able to appear over the no thingness. It is able to originate and cascade through the no thingness. So it was really powerful to see that within the emission of the black sun, and tapping into certain things like this golden horizon that people were seeing. It's that frequency itself is able to kind of show, like when you drop water droplet into water and that boing, that ripple goes out, that big old echo. That's very much so what that energy band was. All of that fire, all of that creation energy that was coming out of the black sun rising, as it's trickling itself down, because again, it's all connected. And when we look at the human biology of it rising, it's still connected internally to us. As above, so below. As the black sun rose, that connection point, as it's shooting and dropping that energy back into the physical realm, boom, that ripple effect, that golden horizon expands out in all directions. And that's why people were having a hard time, which do I look at, which do I look at, because they were both so powerful in their own resonance and captivating. And it was the alchemy of both that was needed, because the black sun was doing its own thing, and you can see that there's no way to play with that energy physically without overloading the human system. So that golden horizon, that droplet, was the way for humans to be able to start to assimilate that same energy of creation that was taking place within the black sun. And it's just so magical. It's so powerful. Oh, what an event. What an event. And there's still things taking place. There were a lot of prophesizers. Hold on, before we get into this. I can normally see, and this is by our lovely viewer, cured by cannabis. I can't normally see auras, but AL, I don't know, but I can suddenly both see a glowing aura around you. Hey, there you go. Fantastic. So what you're seeing is not just this state, this new vibratory state that is just boom, boom, boom coming off me, but that's your shift as well. These are the new abilities and this is what I mean by things aren't over. There was a lot of prophesiers, prophesayers, I don't know, prophecy speakers, the doomsdayers, let's call them. A lot of people that were looking into the prophecies that were supposed to be lining up with this event. And once the rising took place and there wasn't a big doomsday that happened, just like back in Y2K in 2012, nothing took place, everything shifted. But that naysayer mentality lowered the vibration even further back down to that vibrational foundation, like we were talking about. Boom, 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 boom. Go all the way back down to the base, and it anchors them further down instead of looking at it from that point of rising up further with this new energy, this new light, this new shadow. And simply because no doomsday event took place doesn't mean that nothing happened. Everything happened. There was a huge shift, as we were just talking about, as above, so below, black sun rising within us physically. You don't think that this was representative of the shadow dance that Earth is doing right now with herself, healing herself, stepping into this new dimensional frequency that we were even talking about on Sunday with Norma, and these layers, these ice rings being representative of the new state of frequency that Earth herself is stepping into as a vibration. Do you think that doesn't require a shadow dance and having her own black sun rise within her? So this is still happening for us because it's still happening for Earth. And we're going to still have, I want to say, abilities and attributes being developed over this next period of time, much like our Cured by Cannabis is discovering the ability to start seeing new frequencies, engaging in new frequencies, becoming a new frequency. And the rest is just the results of becoming that new frequency. When I say abilities, it's because it's still the way that humans comprehend it. But the fact of the matter is those abilities are a natural state of your most natural state. So it's simply allowing that to take place again, removing the filters and having this new frequency shift into the physical expansion and making that choice to say, yes, I am this physical, I am this frequency, I am this resonantial state, and everything else starts to catch up, including abilities, including physical layout experiences of your reality. All of that is just domino effect. It's the ripple. Boom, 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 boom. The ripple doesn't always move quick. Sometimes it takes a while. But being that source and constantly feeding that draw, I am this frequency. Vroom, 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 goes faster, more consistent. These are big, big shifts that are taking place. Woo-wee! Big, big shifts. I've been drinking a lot more water too. Very conscious of again those choices, because what we're taking in has an effect on the physical body's reception of reality. Now I can always choose my resonantial state, and I can shift a cellular structure based off of that resonantial state. But that doesn't mean that I can just neglect or should choose to neglect taking care of my body or looking at the proper way of taking care of my body. It's still the house in this reality for me to experience this reality. I know it isn't me. I am the source, but it's the way that I'm swimming through this pond right now, and I want to keep it as clean. I want to keep it as up to date as I possibly can. But that also means honoring certain things that this physical body is asking to experience in this reality. Not giving in, again, allowing that the shadow or some other influence to take the hold of making the decisions, but understanding having a draw to certain things, a certain experience is part of this unique version of my expression of creation. So I don't necessarily look at omitting things. I look at how to include them on a conscious decision making level. Nothing gets to call the shots anymore. I make my decisions, and everything else gets to collaborate with me. Shay says she was called away during the eclipse. Did I miss absorbing frequencies? I can't imagine that you did. If you were called away, you were probably doing absorption of frequencies, much like myself. There was a few people that went through very similar experiences to that quantum, not just tunneling, but it was a new quantum state. It was that dancing with the shadow in such a way that we got to take hold of our frequency. We became the state of frequency. It wasn't thinking about it, consciously trying to want or will it into something different. It was becoming, and knowing that becoming that frequency was the choice that made the shift, and everything else just rippled from there. So yes, if you were called away, I assume you were already absorbing the frequencies, as so many of us were. um there were some things that happened that I've heard news stories about during the eclipse. I don't really want to talk about them because they're not in my vibe. They're not in my frequency. I understand why certain things happened in those contexts. People were so convinced of certain prophecies, and the fear state that they were choosing for their vibration absolutely cascaded into a physical reality experience. And that's what they got: fear, 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 fear. And that's not what we talk about here. It's not what we go about. It's not what we market. It's something that I never shy away from, but I certainly am not here to monger and promote fear by any means. What we do with stepping into this new vibratory state is understanding that fear is always going to be a choice. There are certain things, certain indicators that we get when, for example, survival is on the line, or where there is legitimate danger for something. But we've been conditioned very differently on how to experience fear. And fear is always, always going to be a choice. And in my opinion, without a legitimate danger or survival mechanism being put into place, fear becomes a secondary response to things, not response, reaction. Um, the initial being anxiety or, confusion, disappointment, and so many sadness, anger. A lot of these different things can be the initial point for fear, to lead into fear. Fear can also be the initial point to lead into these other responses. Fear is it's a weird thing, and we're still talking about it. So let's get happy again. When I start to look at without danger, without survival, it does not exist without my choice. So having this new vibratory state allows me to say, hey, fear, you don't belong here. It's always going to be love. It's always going to be my decision, my presence of higher vibratory alignment with what I want to shift my reality into, and how that's going to echo out. Because it doesn't just affect me, it affects how I then have that domino when reality catches up with my vibratory state. And I go through those experiences of reality catching up to me. I still have to share those experiences with everybody else on this shared plane of existence that's going through their own journey. I'm never going to be above anybody else on this shared plane. So I need to be consciously aware of how to dance with my shadows, how to dance with this conscious presence. So I'm not pushing other people around. I'm simply honing my own space. And it leaves me the room to consistently be open for collaboration throughout the journey, because I never want to be closed off for collaboration. Gray Wolf is the in between. That's why we have the Wolf's Den. The Wolf's Den was created as a space to collaborate, to converge all different concepts, all different teachings, all different speakings, and people that want to come together to talk about every different varying experience that we can talk about and express and connect it. So having that ability to collaborate along the journey without losing that sense of self, it's very important to me. And I have that understanding anchored in really good now. So that being said, it's been a hell of a week, and where things are headed to from this point, the calmness, the confidence, and the presence towards it is something brand new. There's an excitement factor when I think about it initially. I get, that high vibe state, my passion kicks up, my desire kicks up, my masculinity rises, saying, yep, another opportunity to put things into action and get into building, become that provider for myself and my world. But that initial state is then immediately met with that calmness saying, it's your presence. You already have it. And then it just shifts me into my state of having, and I go, it is. And then it's a weird dance that I'm doing now. And I've heard about this teaching before too, where it's called fifth dimension stillness, where the blissfulness, the just I am presence of fifth dimensional energy. It doesn't entail joy, sadness, anger, happiness, despair. It's the context of those things are all incorporated into the I am presence of fifth dimension. Everything just is within that energy. So the more that I shift into that state to create that physical layout of my energy, I lose the emotional response. And it's not a bad thing because I can tap back into it after I shift into that resonantial state. But when I'm doing the vibratory frequency shift, I go into that fifth dimension stillness, and it's just a whole brand new experience. Because I've heard of people doing it before, and I've literally seen people shift themselves out of that fifth dimensional awareness, because when they get to that point of emotional removal, let's call it, they think that they're doing something wrong. They think they broke themselves somehow. And they go, oh no, I need to feel all of these feelings. Otherwise, I'm not human anymore. And they bring themselves back down into this place of guilt and lower frequency. And then they get to feel all of those feelings again. Yum, 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 comfort zone. And whether it's a beneficial comfort zone or not, it's still something we know. So odds are when we don't have that confidence presence, you're going back to a comfort zone. So when I experience this on a real physical level for myself now, having the excitement be the kindling of the fire, but then when the fire goes, it's just that calm presence and that state of being in the new reality. I didn't look at it as I was doing something wrong or I was broken. Luckily, I had the teachings of what fifth dimensional stillness was. So I went, oh, that's this presence, the I am presence. Everything just is. There's no need to categorize. There is no separation. It all just is. It is contained within the infinity. It's an incredible state to actually shift over into. We have cross 506. I find more and more each day I care less about how people react around me. I just don't give a shit anymore. That's the start. This is really the start. Again, not allowing those influences to take hold of us. The shift for me, going from that I don't give a shit point, was then counteracting it with oh hi, how are you? Like when somebody would hit me with I remember I put on a post one time, a Facebook post a while back, sex is about more than just a few inches of penetration or something like that. This was years back. And my one of my friends who was trying to razz me, he comments on it and he goes, that's what guys with only a few inches have to say, ha ha ha. And instead of getting kind of riled up or going, "Oh, I don't give a fuck," or and putting on that blocker, and again, it's blocking. I didn't reject it. I actually accepted it, and I go, "Oh, that's cute, buddy. I'll take that frustration for you. Don't ever let anybody make you feel bad for who you are." And I just flipped it. I literally took that energy and I completely flipped it and I transmuted it. And that was my next stage from the I don't give a shit into I'm engaging it, but I'm actually flipping the energy. And that was my first initial treading of the water into making the choice of what energy to put back out into the world. And there's still it's an important stage because learning how to consciously direct that energy is where we start to lead into the next stages of those wandering thoughts aren't just energy that we're putting out, it's literally shifting our physical reality. These are choices that we're making the more and more we're thinking or wandering into those thoughts, and it affects us on a vibratory level. You're shifting the layout of your physical reality by doing that. So, by having a conscious first few initial steps of saying, I'm choosing the energy I'm putting out. It's showing you how to dictate the energy direction and the flow of your thoughts, of your power of creation. So that's huge. These are big, big steps to start to go through for all of us. And again, this is why the black sun rises, to show us all of these nuances and a whole new band of frequency and perception that again is just not available without that light. It's very, very cool stuff. If anybody else is has any more questions or is any curiosities about what took place for them over the week, please. We've still got a few more minutes in the call. Feel free to Does anybody else smell burnt toast? Please feel free to throw up a comment. We have something coming in. Speak about semen retention. Oh, that's interesting. There's power in it. I'll say that. There's power in it. And there's also power in semen expression. Um, the whole core concept that we have to keep in mind with it is for men, because women are the house, the womb is where creation takes place. If we think about it in essence, and it's represented in the yin yang, with the yin being the dark, the womb in it represents the no thingness of creation. Something has to come out of the no thingness to be taking form, to be taking shape. In order to start that process, concept, conception, first dimension, we've talked about this. That's the semen, that's the creation. This is something that goes in and rudimentarily takes form. When it hits third dimension creation, starts to take on its own reality, its own shape of things. Semen retention keeps that power of creation circulating within the body. Unfortunately, and this is really, really bad in my generation, where online porn just freaking ran rampant. There's been a huge, I don't want to say waste, but just a throwing away, a misconception of what sex and semen actually entail. The whole act of having sex, when you have missionary position with a partner, your chakra systems line up, and then you connect by going inside the no thingness with the power of creation. Boom, 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 boom. Everything lights up, and you are now assimilating with that person. This is part of the magic that takes place during actual lovemaking. This is why so often the casual sex culture is left feeling so broken and so destroyed, because they don't even understand the levels of things that they're doing to themselves, to their partners, and what they're engaging in on these energetic levels. When we get into the talk of semen retention, again, because it's the power of creation. It also goes into the talk of the sacred oil and the rising of Kundalini energy, for example. The oil that is secreted from our, I believe it's the medulla, and it goes down our spine. It runs in alignment at that same period of time. That oil excretion happens at the same time as a sexual rising, because the two energies are swirling. They're two portals, right? That's oil. In essence, we can think of as a liquefied version of like the no thingness. It is a void. It is a space of pure, open, just energy, which is why it has to go down, and it has to meet this energy of creation. When it hits the vortex of the energy of creation at the base of the spine, if you are doing the proper practices of channeling that sexual energy, it's similar to Kegels, I guess you can go, or Kegels, where you actually flex the muscle down in between by your scrotum, I guess is probably a good way to put it. Just down there in that region, right at the base of your root. And you learn how to channel that sexual energy and that creation energy instead of giving it away by, flagrantly masturbating. It will meet that oil, and it will actually push with its energetic flow the oil back up the spine. When that happens, that's the Kundalini rising. That's when everything starts to get awakened. And it's a slow process going back up, but retaining that sexual energy is very, very similar to channeling that flow inside. That's how we push it back up. Does this mean that you just shouldn't ever engage in that? I personally still do myself, yes, because creation energy, when it's pure, when it's actually come from this point of sacral activation, not a mental influence, not this, oh, she's seductive or blah blah. No, 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 no. If you're getting triggered by something seductive, it should be a sacral seduction. Someone that is so presently powerfully in tune with the alignment of your sacral chakra, they light you up like that, and you go, oh, and you feel it throughout your whole body. When you have those moments, engage in it. Let your body sing in that frequency. Let go of flagrantly and just casually masturbating and releasing that power of creation, because it's literally power that you're throwing into the trash can. Is that really a choice that we want to be making? So that's my my inputs on the sexual energy, and also part and parcel why learning about this stuff makes us better lovers when we are showing up for our partners, because it's not just about, um, in my opinion, the energy that takes place within the physical acts. How I show up is going to define how I'm going to have my needs met within the partnership, within the engagement, but also how considerate I am of making sure my partner's needs are met at the same time. Because if I'm consciously aware of the fulfillment I get from my needs being met, what that does for my activation, absolutely I'm going to be offering that in full capacity to my partner. And this engages in the actual sex in such a format that orgasms aren't just orgasms anymore. They are epiphanies, is the best way to put it. So that's wrapping up the end of our show. We're a little bit over already. I hope this has really been enlightening for everybody as far as how your frequency is going to affect your reality. Cheered by cannabis. This was a great show. I definitely feel more of a connection energetically, like a brother from another mother energy. Interesting. Yes, absolutely. There's This is all understanding that we are the quantum. Here is just shadow expressions. We're just being cast in different versions of the vibratory state of our source. Be your source. Be the I am. Much love, everybody. We'll see you next week.